Welcome to the deep dive. Think for a moment about your daily communication, the meetings, emails, those quick chats. We often just completely underestimate the incredible underlying power of the specific words we choose, even really common ones. Today, we're looking at language as, well, a tool of precision, how certain words work as psychological triggers. We're diving into the principles from Vivek Kumar's words, magical power words that win. And this isn't just about grammar, right? It's the psychology behind communicating effectively. We've got a lot to unpack here, so what's the main goal for you, our listener, today?
Yeah, the mission really is efficiency. We want to give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding some fundamental persuasion techniques. We're going to try and distill how specific word choices can actually alter behavior, maybe subtly influence decisions, and importantly, add real weight and authority to what you say. We're going to peel back the layer a bit and look at the raw power of these language triggers.
Okay, and we're starting with maybe the most deceptively simple word out there, a common connector, but it turns out it's an engine of persuasion. That word is because.
It really is. It's kind of the ultimate mental shortcut. The core psychological idea here is that, well, the human mind seems fundamentally wired to seek reasons, justifications for things. You ask someone to do something, and almost instantly there's that internal, maybe unspoken question, why?
Right, and because is like the key that just unlocks that door. There was this famous experiment that showed this, wasn't there, back in the 70s? Ellen Lanner.
That's the one. Social psychologist Ellen Langer at Harvard, in a really busy setting, a photocopier line. And this experiment is just brilliant because it breaks down how little the quality of the reason sometimes matters, as long as a reason is given.
So how did it work? They tested different ways of asking to cut in line.
Exactly. Langer's team used 3 distinct requests. The first one just set the baseline. How often would people normally comply?
Okay, so the baseline request was just straightforward. No justification.
Precisely. The researcher just walked up and asked, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the machine?" In that situation, only about 60% of people said yes, which feels about right, a normal kind of negotiation.
Okay, 60%. Then came request 2.
Right.
That included a proper reason.
Yes, a solid, valid reason. They added, because I'm in a big rush.
Wow.
And providing that clear, legitimate why caused compliance to jump dramatically. It soared to about 94%.
Wow, 94%. That's huge. So we respond to urgency, to a valid point.
We do. But here's the really fascinating part, request 3. Here, they used a reason that was, well, utterly pointless. They added, because I need to make some copies.
Which is completely obvious.
Right.
Everyone in the line needs to make copies. That adds 0 actual information.
Exactly. It's totally trivial. You'd think the compliance rate would just drop right back down to that initial 60%.
But it didn't, did it? What was the number with that nonsensical reason?
It was startling. It was 93%.
93%. Almost identical to the valid reason.
Virtually identical. 94% for the good reason, 93% for the pointless one.
So what does that tell us? Comparing 94% to 93%, it suggests our brains aren't always digging deep into the logic.
That's the core insight. The word because acts as this profound mental trigger, a shortcut. It satisfies the mind's internal demand for a reason. The moment we hear because, it's like our brain ticks a box, reason provided, and often moves on. Especially if the request itself is pretty small, we often skip critically evaluating the quality of that reason. The structure of the request, having that because, matters more than the justification's content.
That structural power. That's really what we need to absorb here. It sounds like we're reacting to the shape of the language almost, more than the substance sometimes. How does that translate into bigger situations, beyond a copy machine line? High-stakes stuff.
Well, we see direct applications in business. The source mentions Xerox back in their big growth phase in the 1970s. Initially, their salespeople were just trained to ask quite directly, "Can I show you our new Xerox machine?" And apparently they struggled. Low success rates.
Why do you think that direct approach didn't work so well?
Well, it probably lacked that structure, that weight we were talking about. It's just a cold ask. It likely triggered that immediate, "Why should I care?" or "Why should I give you my time?" response.
Yeah.
But the moment they changed their sales training, success rates went up dramatically.
How did they change it?
They incorporated because. They started giving specific, valid reasons, like, "Can I show you our new machine because it could significantly lower your copying costs?" Or maybe because it can save your team X hours every month.
So it reframes it. It goes from being just an interruption to a logical proposition, something potentially beneficial.
Exactly. And even though they probably had those valid reasons all along, The act of explicitly using the word because added that crucial structure. It gave the request authority. It made it feel more substantial, something that required a considered response, not just a quick dismissal.
Okay, so for you, the listener, the practical takeaway for everyday use is pretty clear then. Use this to give your own communication more, well, authority. Like if you're writing an email or a report, get past just making demands. Don't just write, we must prioritize Project A.
Right. That's often just not enough. You need to instantly back it up, lend it that authority by adding the why. So you're right. We must prioritize Project A because the projected ROI looks highest, or because it aligns directly with our stated quarterly goals.
Mhm.
You've instantly transformed what might feel like just a managerial demand into a logical, justifiable decision.
And it helps clarify your opinions too, right?
Oh.
Instead of just, I like that film, which is fine, but
But it's stronger if you say, I liked that film because the story felt really unique, or because the cinematography was just stunning.
Mhm.
You're basically constructing a mini argument for why someone else should agree, or at least understand your perspective. It gives them something concrete to grab onto.
Okay, so we've established how because works for logical persuasion, getting compliance. But the book also talks about language that hits a different level, doesn't it? More about emotional appeal, motivation, connection.
Yeah, shifting from the logic of compliance to maybe the logic of inspiration, this moves us into language that encourages collective action. The book highlights specific motivational words, words designed to spark positive effort, get people moving together, things like believe, achieve, imagine, and especially words that build unity like together or we.
These aren't just, feel-good words, though. They function as real psychological tools for getting people on board, generating movement.
They really do. Imagine, for example, is powerful because it prompts this kind of cognitive alignment. It gets everyone picturing a positive shared future. The brain starts processing it as a real possibility. Believe helps lower the perceived risk of tackling something difficult. It builds confidence that the goal is actually reachable. And using together or we, well, that instantly makes a big task feel like a shared burden, not just your problem. It fosters that sense of belonging, of collective strength.
And we see these principles, the logic of because, combined with the emotion of imagine, used incredibly effectively in history, right? The book mentions Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech.
Absolutely. It's held up as a masterclass. Because the speech wasn't just about painting that vision, the imagine or dream part. He powerfully connected that positive future vision with clear, compelling reasons, the because for why change was urgent now. He layered in justifications, stating change must happen, partly because, the promises of equality hadn't been fulfilled even 100 years later.
So he used because to validate the urgency, the need for action, and then words like dream, believe, together to provide the emotional goal, the destination. It's like logic defines the problem, and the emotional vocabulary defines the solution and inspires the effort. That's a potent mix.
Incredibly potent. And it's just as vital in really high-stakes personal situations like professional partnerships. There's an anecdote in the book about two business partners, Rahul and Shashi. They were seriously stuck, major conflict about the company's direction.
Right, and it was threatening not just the business, but their friendship, too. How did simple words help there?
Well, they eventually realized they were arguing about tactics, not the ultimate goals. The breakthrough came when they started using because, but not to justify a business tactic. They used it to explain their underlying emotion, their vulnerability. In this case, it was fear. Rahul finally opened up and shared his real fear, because I fear we'll fall behind our competitors if we don't grab this opportunity. And then Shashi, hearing that honesty, could respond with his own deep concern. Because I fear we're moving too fast and I really don't want to lose our money and maybe more importantly, our friendship.
That's a huge shift, isn't it? Using because to explain the why behind your feelings, fears, hopes, worries. It creates instant empathy. You stop seeing just an opposing argument and start seeing a shared human vulnerability.
Exactly. It shifts the whole dynamic instantly from conflict to potential collaboration. They weren't really fighting about which direction to go anymore. They were just expressing different valid fears about the journey. And once those fears were out there, justified with because, understood, they could actually start working together on solutions that addressed both concerns.
Okay, but we do need to add a note of caution here, right?
Yeah.
If these words are so powerful, they can't be some kind of, magic wand. There must be limits.
Oh, absolutely not a magic wand. The source is very clear on this. The power hinges entirely on balance and authenticity. If you overuse because, just stuffing it in everywhere, or if the reason you give is obviously weak or worse, dishonest, it completely
You
backfires.
risk sounding inauthentic, and that kills credibility fast.
Definitely. Vivek Kumar, the author, actually shares a story about himself doing this. Early in his career, he deliberately loaded up a really important business proposal with tons of becauses. He thought the sheer volume of justifications would make his argument bulletproof.
Then what happened?
It had the opposite effect. The proposal just felt heavy, dense, really repetitive. His colleagues, the client, they found it kind of overwhelming, and the sheer number of justifications actually ended up obscuring the main points, the most important reasons. The lesson was clear. If the reason isn't genuine, if it's not directly relevant, the word loses its magic. It just becomes noise, conversational clutter.
Which brings us to the flip side, maybe the defensive skill for the listener. Understanding how these words work also means you need to become a more, let's say, conscious listener.
Exactly. When you hear someone use because, do you actually pause and evaluate the reason they give? Active listening isn't just hearing the words flow past. It's analyzing the intent, the logic, or maybe the lack of logic behind why they're using that structure.
That pause seems crucial. Hear the trigger word, take a beat. Ask yourself, is this reason logical? Is it relevant to what they're asking? Or is it maybe just being used as a tool, a filler, because the speaker knows, consciously or not, that offering some justification makes compliance more likely?
And this applies just as much to that motivational language we talked about. When someone's using those powerful unifying words, believe, imagine, we need to try and discern, is this coming from a place of genuine shared vision and strategy?